Grambling knocked off Prairie View A&M at the State Fair Classic, and they won every offensive battle on the way there. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. And thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU. And remember, just because the mic cuts off doesn't mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter. We're in charge of the left arm. Now it's time for the right arm. Follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We wrap up today's episode with, listen, Hampton and their offense is looking really good this year, and is part of the reason that they were able to get their first CAA victory of the season. But we kick off the episode with our doubleheader, our two-part, our back-to-back Mission Impossible 1, Mission Impossible 2. That's what we're here for, and that is Prairie View versus Grambling, the State Fair Classic. We'll wrap up with how did this game impact the SWAC West standings, but first, who won? And I mean, I don't know why I'm really asking this question like I didn't give it in the intro. The answer is Grambling. Grambling was able to come up victorious in this game, and they won every offensive battle that we set out to look for on the way to doing it. Now, allow me to call back to Friday's episode, which is our preview. And I told you that we would get to this on Tuesday, more likely than not, because I just did not think I was going to have time to be able to give this game the energy that it deserved for a Monday episode. I was correct in that, but we're here on Tuesday, and let me tell you what, we are cooking, because we had Myles Crawley versus Trayshawn Conley. We had Floyd Chalk IV and Chance Williams versus Ahmad Antoine and Caleb Johnson. That was the running back tandem, and then that was also the quarterback battle. So let's kick it off with the running backs, because I felt like Chalk and Williams versus Antoine and Johnson was a more definitive victory for Grambling than either one. This was a very decisive, first round knockout. It was clear cut. When you look at what Antoine and Johnson was able to do, they had 64 yards and a touchdown. So that's already listening. Okay, that's not a good game. Like, for a duo, you're going to chalk it up to the run defense. But remember, we are considering running back tandem versus running back tandem. So we have to look at what the other side did. And I'll just take a second to look at Chance Williams. Chance Williams has 76 yards and a touchdown. Let me go back to that real quick. Chance Williams by himself has 76 yards and a touchdown. Antoine, Caleb Johnson together had 64 yards and a touchdown. Put together, not a piece, put together. Chance Williams wasn't even the leading rusher for Grambling. That honor went on to Floyd Chalk IV. So we're talking about two running backs apiece who outperformed the tandem put together. Clear-cut victory for Grambling. No questions about it. And look, even though there was another running back, I think his last name was Wishersham, who it was number 2. Had a big run for PV. But yeah, multiple other runs, and nothing came from it. Grambling did a really good job of stopping the run game for PV, and I do believe that that is the engine for the offense. As much as I like Trayshawn Conley and feel like he's improved, I still kind of feel like that running game is the heartbeat of the offense, and when that can't get going, I don't want to say keep going, but it was kind of start and stop. It was kind of like, I do think that the passing game suffers because of it, but you still seen some really good throws from Conley. And let's use this as a natural transition. I still give that to Crawley. I give that to Myles Crawley. So I have both of these victories going to Grambling. And I would love to know what you think about it. But to me, you had 11 to 22 for 221 yards from Trayvon Conley. And then you had 22 of 41 for 240 something yards from Myles Crawley. There were more explosive plays that came from from Prairie View's offense, but the consistency factor to me came from Grambling. It was a little bit better of a completion percentage. Wasn't that much better, but it was a little bit better of a completion percentage. And then also, just throughout the game, a lot of times I try to look at the game without knowing the stats. Of course, they're going to flash up and say, oh, this is what he's been doing. But I try to really watch it without the stats. I just felt like they were more consistent passing the ball with Grambling. And part of this goes to the play calling. And another thing that I walked away saying is that Grambling has a complete offense. You look at the quarterback. I thought that things probably could have been a little bit better between the timing with him and his wide receivers because, I don't know, just down the field, it didn't seem like it was as on point today as I had seen it in the past. But you know what? That's okay. Every game isn't going to be perfect. But you still know that Crawley can do that. You look at the wide receivers. These guys are athletes. When you get them down the field, you're looking at a bunch of wide receivers who can adjust to the ball. You're looking at wide receivers who most offenses look at as short, intermediate, deep. Those are the three levels of the offense when you're discussing routes. But for me, Grambling is more than that. To me, when I look at Myles Crawley and I look at the weapons that he has, the athletes that he has at the wide receiver position, it's more than just your typical short, intermediate, and deep. You also have players who give them the ball behind the line of scrimmage. That to me, that's a fourth level. That's a four-level offense. And you get them the ball in space, even if it's behind the line of scrimmage, they're athletic enough to be able to do things with the ball in their hand that just contribute to easy, efficient offense. And we've seen it specifically on their first offensive drive. They drove down the field so far. They didn't even have a lot of RPOs. They didn't have a lot of run action. It was just, all right, let's get the ball into our playmakers, the wide receivers specifically, get it into their hands, and let's go do something with it. Then you started incorporating RPOs, and you had Crawley on a couple of them. I think the first 7 plays were passes, and I don't think many were farther than 7 yards down the field. But let's not just stop at the passing game. Let's look at the running game, because you look at Chalk, you look at Williams. Both are twitchy, both are strong, both are shifty. I don't care if it's a 3rd and 7. I don't care if it's a 3rd and 1. I trust both of those running backs to go out there and get it done. See, here's the thing about them too, is that they all can be back next year for the most part. That's the perfect thing for them, is that Grambling is young. Grambling has young weapons on the offensive side of the ball. This is good. I think that Grambling not only won all of the battles that they needed to win, they showed me how complete they are, because if you take away the passing game, I trust that duo to be able to run it down your throat until the passing game comes along. If you take away the running game, I trust the passing game be able to get it done until the running game comes along. And even if they don't, I think that they can stay in the game with either aspect of their offense. This is a good team. This is a talented team. And this is a team that I'm looking forward to see what they can do as the year goes on. I'm not going to hype them up too much, because the last time I hyped up Grambling, I was talking about the basketball team. I said that they were the class of HBCU basketball. And that didn't work out too well for me. But then again, maybe it did, because not going to do it. I'm not even going to do it. This is football season. I was going to say something. I'm going to leave it alone, and we're going to transition to the SWAC West, because Grambling has knocked off Prairie View. So the team that I just said was a front runner a week ago is no longer the front runner this week. What does this mean for the SWAC West? I'll answer that as we continue forward with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And listen, there's no such thing as procrastination kills when you have Gametime. I don't care if you waited to a day before before the game. Hop on the Gametime app, browse through, look for the event, and you'll be able to find a price that fits you. Matter of fact, not only will you be able to find a price that fits you, I don't think that you'll be able to find a better price elsewhere. Neither does Gametime, because if you do find a Gametime or a price that tops that, they'll pay you back 110% on the difference. So if you can find one in the same section, in the same row as you pick, or as the ticket that you purchased, you can get 110 back. So it doesn't matter if it's the music, concert, doesn't matter if it's a comedy show, doesn't matter if it's a sporting event, go to Gametime. And when you do, go to Gametime, the app, use the promo code Locked On College, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, tomorrow's episode, we'll be back with North Carolina Central because Davius Richard had a I'm him performance, and I cannot wait. I wanted to get to this game earlier, but we are going to get to it on tomorrow's episode. But on Friday, look forward to our 10 a.m. to noon Central Time live stream, college football kickoff live, where I'll be breaking down the biggest HBCU games upcoming. So it'll be kind of summed up. I give a lot on the show, but I sum it up to like my 1, 2, and if I'm really loving the week, maybe 3 matchups that you need to watch. So make sure you tune in to that. But right now, what's up with the SWAC West? What happens after Grambling is able to knock off Prairie View? Because that's what happened. In preparation for this game, I kind of drew a couple of parallels. And that parallel was to the FAMU Alabama State game. And what I saw in that game was an opportunity for FAMU to put their biggest competitions at an extreme arm's length. I mean, like Shaq arm's length. Not just, okay, well, they're over there, but we still need to watch them. Once you knocked off Jackson State and you knocked off Alabama State, which was what you were trying to accomplish in that game going into it, those are the 2 teams I really felt like you needed to worry about. Now you just got to handle your business for real. You've knocked off your biggest competition. And I felt like Prairie View was kind of in that spot. Not as much, but they were close to it because all conference games technically weigh the same. I know SWAC plays SWAC in games that aren't conference, but all SWAC conference games technically weigh the same amount. Doesn't matter if you're on the East playing somebody on the West or vice versa. Everything's the same. Or if you're on the West playing somebody in the West, it's all the same. But when you're playing somebody within your division, you're playing for the extra incentive of possibly having a tiebreaker over that team. Technically, it's the same weight. You don't get like, it's not like, oh, well, I won 3 games in the West, but I lost 5 games in the East. Nobody else won 3 games in the West, so now I'm the champ. No, all conference games weigh equally, but there is a part of that that comes into play for tiebreakers. So PV had already knocked off Texas Southern to start the year. PV had just knocked off Alcorn a week prior. So now they're going into a situation where they can knock off PV or TSU, Alcorn, and then also now Grambling. But that didn't happen. Granted, even if I already said this before and I'll say it again, it's not an adjustment. You can go back to Friday and you can watch the episode. If you're telling me I didn't say that on Friday, I will watch the episode again with you. We can hop on a stream and watch it together, right? We can share screen and everything. Grambling winning this game does not change this fact. The West was still wide open. This is not the East where it's just FAMU, Alabama State, and then also Jackson State. This is not that. This is not that. To me, this is a division where you have 4 teams who can really win it. I had 5 at one point before. TSU, I think, is still out of it. Losing to PV, losing to Grambling, I think that they're just out of it. Sorry. I hate it. Like, I hate it, but that's what I think the truth is. But Southern was always undefeated. They still are. They were undefeated going into the game. They're undefeated now, so you couldn't write them off, and neither Grambling or Prairie View had played Southern yet. So you're always going to have Southern right there on your neck. So nothing changes. But now with Grambling winning, well, now Alcorn's a little bit different because Alcorn's sitting there like, okay, I can't get my lick back on PV, but what I can do is I can beat Grambling. And now maybe you go in next week with a 3-way tie. Of course, Southern's still there. It's an early 3-way tie. It's way too early to be discussing tiebreakers. But now you have an opportunity to beat an undefeated team. Now you have an opportunity to go out there and beat Grambling and beat Southern. And there's so many things that can happen. I don't think you're going to have 3 teams with 1 loss. I don't think that's going to happen. But you do walk out there with the possibility of not having to chase Prairie View so much. You have at least the chance to beat a team that could be in a 3-way tiebreaker. And then it's just like what happens from there. So this is way different. And I'll say this, Alcorn is probably the second happiest team behind Grambling after the victory because you don't want to be chasing the team that's undefeated and waiting for them to lose every single week. Let's just say that you're sitting there waiting for Prairie View to lose 2 times this year. Well, now once has happened. If you're sitting there waiting for Prairie View to lose twice because you already lost to them. So you need them to lose 2 times so you're not tied. At least that first loss has happened. And now you get to say, all right, cool. Now you just need to lose one more game. Maybe that's the FAMU. I don't know. Like it's things like that. Southern probably doesn't care because they control their own destiny. Nothing changed there. But I'll say this: put the numbers and records aside, and you're just looking at, because technically Grambling and Southern are tied for first place. Put the records aside. Grambling has the most impressive victory. Southern doesn't have a victory over somebody like PV. They don't. They beat UAPB, and I don't know. I'm going to be watching the Alabama A&M Jackson State game a lot closely. Excuse me. I'm going to be looking at that game a lot closely. I'm not sold on Alabama A&M all the way yet. I'm just not. I am just not sold all the way. This game will do wonders for that. Beating PV is the best win. I also think that they show more consistency. They've shown the ability to string together consistent offense. They had consistent offense through this game. It wasn't a half where you're going. Even coming off of a 27-point victory over UAPB, you didn't score in the last, 28 minutes? You had a one-play, 33-yard touchdown drive at the beginning of the third quarter coming off of a fumble. Then you got the ball back. I'm not getting into Southern right now. I'm not doing that right now with them. But I'll say this. I love the dramatics. I love the extras. I kind of hope that we get the Bayou Classic, and that's going to be the game that decides it all. It doesn't have to mean that Grambling or Southern wins the game and they immediately win the division. Yeah, win the division. But last year, Southern had to win that game in order to make it to the SWAC championship. And I would love for another situation like that, for it to come down to the wire, for us to know all of the marbles are riding on this game, to know all of the tiebreaker situations. All of those things, to me, would be great. So I can wish for the dramatics, but at the end of the day, all I want to see is some good football. And right now, Grambling has put up some good football. They are the top dogs in the SWAC West to me. Now they got to go up against Alcorn next week, and we got to run all of the storylines back. But one thing we ain't running back quite yet. We still got a couple of minutes before we run it back to the start. It's today's episode of Locked on HBCU, but we're going to move forward and switch over to the CAA because Hampton got their first conference victory of the year. We'll look at that and their strong offense as we continue with Locked on HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs, and I'll be honest with you, this is by far my favorite read to do. First off, if you go there, they got these hats, right? Got the fresh retwist, so I'm not going to put it on my head too much. They ain't hat time yet, but I hit it with the Timmy Thurn. But Birddogs, to me, are the most comfortable sweats that I own. They're the most comfortable shorts that I own. I have both of them, and they're absolutely amazing. I love the fact that they look so sleek, but I can move in them. You might look at them like, oh, those are tight, but they move. They're breathable, right? All of those things. They're not tight. They're slim. I always say they're not tight, they're slim. They're not tight, they're slim. They're not tight, they're slim. Slim looks good, but still gives you mobility. That's exactly what Birddogs is. Go get you some right now. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Get you a hat, get you a water bottle, get you something, get you something, get you something. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I'm an idiot, threw the hat at the camera and forgot to change the thing. But that's what we do. The antics are here. But I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. So thank you. Thank you. Hampton gets a CAA win early in the season, and their offense looks really good, like really good. And, Hampton has played well this year, and they continue that streak against Richmond, and that was their first conference victory of the year. I know I said I wasn't going to drink on camera, but I'll lean away for a second. But, they got their first victory of the year in conference play, and now they're 3-1, right? And all jokes aside, all funniness aside, let's just go ahead and get into it, because to me, this is a big deal because, one, they've already matched their conference win total from the week prior or the season prior. But then also Hampton just has looked impressive this year. And I want to see if they're able to continue this going into CAA play. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One, in the Big South year 1, because they spent 2 years in that conference. In Big South year 1, they won 1 game. In Big South year 2, they won 3 games. I'm not saying that I want a 1-3 improvement. I would love for it to be even better than that. They were projected to be what I think dead last in the conference this upcoming year in the preseason poll, but they've looked really good to me up to this point. But even if it's 3 games, even if it's 2, whatever it is, I'm just interested to watch the improvement as you go from the first year in the conference to a second year in the conference. The same way watching North Carolina A&T's first year in the conference will be really interesting to see. It's not looking too good so far, but it'll be interesting. And then also, I just think they look good. Throw the history out. Throw what you've done in year 1 versus year 2 in a different conference and then the improve. Throw all of that out. Hampton just looks good in 2023. The 2023 version of the Pirates are a good football team, a good-looking football team thus far throughout the season. And I think I let that game against Norfolk State really throw me off my pivot because I'm sitting here like, yeah, they looking good after that game with Grambling, but then they lose to Norfolk State, who had just lost to Virginia State, and I'm like, I don't know. I can't really call it, right? That's how I was feeling. But you look at what they've been able to do this year, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. When you specifically look at what the offense of Hampton has been able to do, they've been really good. You know, they've crossed 30 points 3 out of the 4 games that they played. In all 3 of those games, they won. The one game that they didn't, they lost, and that was against Norfolk State, right? But overall, they've been consistent on the offensive side of the ball. And you look at Richmond. Let's go through it. Here we go. Let's go through it. Hampton scores 31 points on Richmond. The only team to score 30 or more on Richmond was Michigan State. Hampton put up 35 on Grambling. The only team to put up 30 or more on Grambling was LSU. Hampton put up 35 on Howard. The only team, 34 on Howard. The only team to score 30 or more on Howard was Eastern Michigan. So in 3 games this year, the Hampton Pirates had put up 30 points on a team that only allowed an FBS team outside of Hampton, of course. The only other team to score 30 points on their opponents was an FBS opponent. This is a powerful offense. This is an offense that has carried this now into CAA play. And they're playing against Richmond, who Coach Prunty said, this is a tough one for us. They disguise their calls. A lot of times it's difficult. Y'all got to understand, it's not just one game. I know that Richmond lost to Morgan State, so maybe you're looking like, oh, it's not. No, it's. I don't know if it's as impressive as the Morgan State victory because at the time, Richmond was number 16 in the nation on the FCS level. But when you look at the repeated offense or the repeated offensive display, there we go. When you look at the repeated offensive display of Hampton throughout the year, 3 games throughout the year out of 4, they scored 30 points. They put up 31 on Richmond. Nobody has done that. They put up 35 on Grambling. The only other team to put up 30 or more on Grambling was LSU. They put up 34 on Howard. And the only other team to put up 30 or more on Howard was Eastern Michigan. So outside of Hampton, no team has done that to Richmond. Only one team has done that to Howard, and that was an FBS competition. And you're looking at only one, or excuse me, Michigan State did that to Richmond. And you're looking at LSU versus Grambling. So the 3 teams that they've hung 30 on haven't let that happen with any other team outside of Hampton and an FBS opponent, which is a step up. This is an impressive offense that we're looking at. This is impressive. And I think maybe the most impressive part about it is the fact that they're being led by Christofer Zellous, who is a 4-game starter, not a 4-year starter, a 4-game starter. And you look at Coach Prunty, he said, I thought that Zellous played with a lot of poise today. It was only his 4th start, and he played like a veteran. I like the way he mixed the run and the pass and read the defense well. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about Hampton, and their offense is the main one. You have Christofer Zellous, a quarterback who I thought was really good when I seen him against Grambling, and now in this game against Richmond, he just set a career high in passing yards. Christofer Zellous and Hampton's offense are definitely going to be players in a side of the ball to watch as they move into CAA ball. And if you want to see how we track them, you have to stick here. Locked on HBCU. Monday through Friday, your daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics. Okay, now I'm Darian Gray, and I really do appreciate you, truly and genuinely appreciate you for making this the first listen of your day every single day. It means a lot, so thank you to my everydayers. Tomorrow, Davius Richard is him. And we're going to look at why after what he was able to do to Campbell in last week's game. And in the meantime, in between time, and if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we're here to the family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.